Hey, welcome to the Watchers podcast. I'm Eddie. This is
LD.
yeah, and this week we will be talking about coping mechanisms and addiction. But before we do, make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, and press the notification button to get notifications on new videos that we put out. So, last podcast we spoke about codependency, and it is a known fact that codependency and addiction goes hand in hand. So we're going to transition from our talking about codependency into this. So what would you like to say? What would you add to that? How do we start this?
Yeah, so basically, obviously, as we've said before, the addiction, it's another way of saying coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
So even though we're going to start off talking about how things lead into addiction, we want to also make sure that it's the way people try to cope with things that makes them get addicted to things, isn't it? So I believe addiction usually starts when there is something missing. We always want to feel whole. Yeah. And when something's incomplete, you need something to fill that gap. And filling that gap comes with, there's positive sides, into trying to find coping mechanisms, but then it could get negative when it becomes so addictive that it's taking over your life. So it's good to talk about how it all starts. So, for example, as we said, addiction starts with trying to fit a hole. With people, sometimes it could start off with a situation that's not having a father around, not having a mother around, being bullied, being teased. When your body has been under constant stress and you have to constantly face life, you always have to say, you need something to zone you out. And people choose so many things to zone them out. But sometimes the things that they choose to zone them out becomes addictive. And then that becomes a problem.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
So, go on, AD, yeah.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just going to say, people also attach negative things to addiction. So in their mind, if they're not on alcohol or drugs or pornography or anything like that, they're not addicted, because you can only be addicted to those things. But what people don't realize is addiction, the spectrum of addiction goes way beyond those things. You could be doing something that's deemed healthy and it could be an addiction, and it will become unhealthy. And I will give examples of that as we go on. And like you mentioned, the question is why? What leads to that? And you made a point of sometimes it's dealing with life and so on and so forth. So we could start with the why or expand on the why, and then transition into the addiction and the coping mechanisms.
Yeah, exactly. So the why. If let's say, like, we're going to start with, because what happens is that around us, we do see a lot of young people who become addicted to drugs and stuff. It starts off young sometimes. And of course, it could start off later when you deal with other complex problems. But let's say a person is raised at home with both mom and dad, and the dad decided to cheat on the mom. The son might have loved the dad very much, but now that the father figure is not present and he needs a father figure, we all know that when it comes to family, having both parents is what makes the family strong, because they both play a part.
If you have both solid parents, because you can have two rocky parents and still end up addicted or in the same. It all has to do with the solidity of the people that are your parents.
Exactly. And just to clarify as well, someone could have good parents and still get addicted to stuff later. But I'm just touching on the area of what could happen in someone else's. So some people, it starts off differently. So father figure, dad is not around, hasn't got much confidence. Yeah. If you haven't got much confidence, what do you do to boost? For instance, it's funny, before we even get into it, sometimes what people do is when they're going out with friends or they're going to meet someone new, what do? They have a little drink to give them confidence to be able to converse because it makes them feel relaxed. Now, if this young person is growing and facing life and seeing his friends with his parents around and having no guidance and there's a void, he thinks, he goes out with his friends one day, let's say have a drink or have a smoke, immediately likes the feeling that it gave them. And that feeling is never forgotten. Then you think, oh, I'm feeling a bit stressed again, but I do remember I had something before that made me feel calm. And I think whatever made you feel calm, because we just don't want to focus on what it is that they take. You know, it could be anything, you know, it could be drink, it could be drugs. So whatever that they took that made them feel calm, it's never forgotten in the brain. And guess what? They go back to it again and then they become addicted. And then it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse. You know,
exactly.
There's this young guy that I know, he lost his dad at a very young age, you know, around when he was about 12 years of age, 12, 13. And he has never been able to deal with the grief. So he started smoking weed, smoking, drinking, and that helped him. But now it got to the stage where, you know, it took him a while to come. He's working on it now, but he can admit himself that it's a lot of effort to overcome addiction. But that's what led him into addiction, isn't it? With others, it could be relationship, being in the wrong relationship. So the whys are many. And I don't know if you know any whys or any examples that you've seen yourself as to why sometimes people, you know, get into
everything you said is right. I'm going to expand on what you said in terms of using your friend who lost his dad at a young age. It's stuff like that or traumatic stuff in childhood that make people codependent. Yeah. And in codependency, we are, as human beings, we're not just the physical and the mental and the emotional. We're all those things and the psychological. Yeah. And we forget that aspect. And when there's a lot of psychological damage done in youth, when you're young, it's almost like your brain. I used an example last week of the spine adjusts to adapt to its environment. Your brain adapts in a very unnatural way to that loss and that trauma, right? And with codependence, the reason they're always fawning and people pleasing is because they desperately need love and all that stuff to fill that gap. And unfortunately, when you are like that, you get abused and taken advantage of. So what happens is people with that disposition attach to something and become addicted. So it could, like we said, it could be alcohol, it could be love. You saw it, or not love, but the quest for love, which ends up going into a loop of abuse, hurt, you know, and then you go hunting for love again, abuse, hurt, and it gets addictive because you're trying to fill a void that you don't necessarily know. Like someone I follow, Lisa Romano, we spoke about her last week. She said it's hard to fix a hole in a wall if you can't see it, if you don't know there's a hole in the wall. You know, so people tend to go on drugs to cope. And let's not even talk about drugs and alcohol. Let's say like social media. Yeah. Scrolling social media, scrolling, trying to get likes, you know, validation through likes, through comments, you know. This is the new addiction now, you know, the mobile phone, electronics, even games. I could use an example of with me in hard during hard times. I would play a game called Tekken, and Tekken is about fighting other people and winning. So it's all about winning. It's a casino, thing. You fight, you win, you feel better, and then when you start losing, you start to feel miserable,
Yeah.
and then you just feel more and more miserable. Then you start winning again, you feel good, you feel euphoric, and 3, 4, 5 hours could pass, and you don't know, and it's hard for you to put the controller down. Even binging Netflix series is an addiction because, like you said, you want to remove yourself from a world that makes you feel depressed or lacking. So you watch comedies or programs like series, and then when the series is done, you feel depressed because
100%.
it brings you right back into reality because it's over.
Brings back to reality, and exactly, and that's the addiction. Now, this is another interesting thing. It's going to sound weird, but whatever that you've turned into made you feel good. So, for example, having a good drink, like the right amount, you're like, oh, I feel good. I feel good because there's a reason why they go back to it. But then it gets to a point whereby it might not make you feel good as much, but you need more to get that first feeling again.
Yeah.
And the addiction just keeps getting worse and worse. The interesting thing about addiction that I have noticed myself is when you get addicted, oh man, I've just lost my point. It was coming into my head. But yeah, it makes you feel good. You go back to it.
You need more. You always need more. You always need to
exactly.
More.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. You've brought it back. So you need more. So in the sense of, if whatever you've taken is going to make you feel good for, let's say, 2 hours, what happens when you're back into reality? What is the thing you think about again? So that's why sometimes you see people, let's say, who are chain smokers, because it's like the moment they feel like this has calmed me down a bit and they are back, it's like, oh, I need another one, So it's not people are bad for getting addicted to things. Let's just get that. It just means that they feel too much sometimes and they don't want to feel it.
Repeat that first. You said it doesn't mean that people are bad. You said,
yeah, it doesn't mean that people are bad. It means they feel, they've got this, they feel things. And, being that sort of person with that personality is not easy. And a lot of times it's not just, you might see people get addicted to stuff and they look hard now. It doesn't mean that they are hard. When they first started off, they were just going through life, faced a few traumas in their life, faced a few painful things, whether it's in relationship, family, work, marriage, you name it. And they felt it so badly that they turned to something that makes them feel better. So they don't start off as being bad. Like, no one starts getting addicted to stuff because they're a bad person. That's one thing that we need to make clear.
And another thing, no one sticks with an addiction because they like it. There's this misconception that people who are addicted like it and they can't control themselves because they like it. No, that's not how it works. You were speaking about trauma. You were saying that people, whenever they're brought back to reality, they want more. They need more to feel better. And I was going to ask you, why is that? And the thing is, the reason that happens is, let's say you're addicted to something. Yeah, your brain records that because you're dealing with whatever you're dealing with. You're dealing with maybe depression, anxiety, codependency, a lot of internal things that people don't see. You hide it with a smile. You hide it with great work ethic. You hide it with kindness. You hide it with all these things. So people don't see what's underneath, right? So you go on, let's say, have your drink, yeah? And then you feel good, and then you stop, and then you come back into reality. And the problem is, it's always like a downward spiral. Because when you come back into reality sucks. And it can get worse. Something can happen at work. Somebody that you like could hurt you. Yeah. So now your brain's recorded, oh, snap. Everything around him has gotten worse. We need to up the dosage. It's like if you go to a doctor and you get worse, they say, oh, up the dosage, up the dosage. So your brain is doing the same thing as like, oh, this is even worse, up the dosage, more alcohol to counter that, to counter what's going on around you. And that's where addiction starts. And a lot of people, they reach a point where the addiction becomes painful. They hate it, they despise themselves, they despise the addiction. The problem is their brain's already in survival mode. So their being will hate it, but their brain is like, so much stress going on, must go to the thing that made him feel better. We must survive. So before you know it, like I said, using my analogy last time, you want to go this way, but your brain is pulling you this way because it needs to survive. So it's like, let's go to the pub or get 5 packs of cigarettes. And to add to this point quickly, I will never forget a study that I read a long time ago involving mice, where they put a mouse in a very cramped cage, by itself, no movement, no activity, like prison. Mm-hmm. And they put 2 bottles, 1 bottle of water and 1 bottle of heroin. And of course, the mouse is going to go to the water first, it's natural, but then the mouse started to drink the heroin. And as time went on, the mouse just kept going to heroin, It was addicted to heroin. They couldn't get it off the heroin, yeah? They took the same mouse and put it in a massive cage, like a playpen with wheels to run on. Other mice, it's like a playground for mice, yeah? They put the water and the heroin there again. Of course, the mouse is already in addiction mode, so he went straight to the heroin. But after a while, meeting other mice, going on wheels, running around, food every day, the mouse got happier and happier. As time went on, the mouse resisted the heroin bit by bit until it reached a point where the mouse was just drinking water. The mouse literally didn't even look at the heroin. Yeah. And the whole point of that study was the mouse's environment. Yeah. He was happy in that environment. It was an environment where he had interaction with other mice, social interaction, food. He didn't have to worry about food. He had space to move, So he didn't have to depend on the coping mechanism. Whereas in the other cage, it was like prison. It was misery. Probably felt depressed, And then he sips on this heroin and he feels nice. Oh, this feels cool. So when you're in that oppressive environment, yeah, you're gonna go to the one thing that keeps you feeling good.
100%.
Even to the point where you can feel it destroying you, but even when you say, "Oh, this is destroying me, I need to stop," but your brain is like, "What do you mean stop, dude? You're still in this crappy environment. We need to keep, going. So you might be done, but I'm going to the heroin, So that study stuck with me when explaining addiction.
Exactly. So basically, with the environment you're in, because the thing is, what is your reality? If your reality is not making you happy, you are more likely to find things that will keep you going. And especially if it's an environment where you are trapped. So if you are trapped in, like, you can't find a job, or you can't, find someone who loves you, you feel lonely, and you can't even pay your way out. Not say pay your way out, you still have to live and rely on family members, but then you have to be there because you've got no choice. Then what happens is you think, well, I've got to cope with this. What can I do? It's Saturday. Let me go buy another bottle. Let me go smoke. Some addiction is also pornography addiction, because sex gives people pleasure. People watch pornography to masturbate, just to feel pleasure, all these things just to make them feel good. And then you keep getting addicted to it. So it's like, you made an interesting point about hating what you're actually doing, because deep down, do they really want to be addicted to something, or they just want to get better? But it happens that this thing is just giving them quick relief. And the key point is quick. Because the thing with addiction is whatever you're addicted to is not supposed to fix your life forever. It's the actual working of yourself, changing your mentality. That is what is good in the long run, because any addiction is temporary relief. Yeah. We could touch on shopping. Yeah. People say, I need to feel good. They start spending money. They shop. They feel good. Couple of days later, back to square one. I need to buy this. And then there are some people, because I don't know, it gives you, and I know you've spoken about the science behind the brain, about how when you get rewarded, there's a part that just lights up saying, ooh, reward. So that's the thing with addiction. It's a quick fix. Quick fix. I need again, quick fix, you know? And it's so bad that sometimes you're around certain people and you're at the workplace and you know, someone will say, I need a smoke right now. It's almost as if when they first say, you think they're joking, and then they keep saying, and you're like, wow, like you really need this. You really need this. That's because they need a quick fix, you know, and that's what it does.